The hand we're going to show you and break down today features Daniel Negreanu, a guy who is often talking a lot during the hands that he's playing, although in this hand it happens to be his opponent, Jason Calacanis, who is doing most of the talking.
Calacanis is a rich venture capitalist. He's an amateur, and it's a 6-max cash game because it's from the big game on PokerStars.
This hand was suggested to us on Twitter by Josiah Rivera. If you have a suggestion for the breakdown, tweet it at us and include a YouTube link.
And this hand was voted on by our patrons on Patreon. If you want to know more about that or support the poker guys, just click BAM right there and you'll learn more about it.
We're going to break this hand down as it goes, so get ready for some analysis.
Pocket sevens for Jason Calacanis. Raised to 1200. Daniel, 8-6 suited. Calls. And Doyle's going to get a look at the flop as well. 4-5 tray, 2 diamonds.
Daniel's got 2 overcards, a gut shot, and flush draws. I'd expect a semi-bluff here, try to build a pot.
And there it is, leads out 2,500. Doyle folds, Calacanis calls.
Got a little some of that.
Well, that is one of the best possible flops for Daniel's hand, which is why he bets here. It makes a lot of sense to try to build a pot right now, make sure it doesn't check through. Just try to get as much money in the pot as you possibly can here on this flop because it's a dream flop.
Absolutely it is. This is exactly the kind of flop, by the way, that Calacanis might really legitimately check on this flop because it's 5 high. That hits Daniel's and Doyle's ranges so much better than the button opening range. Although we know with 2 sevens, Calacanis is betting this flop if it checks to him.
Yeah, he likely is, but Calacanis could have a lot of hands that he might check, but also might call a bet with. So this way Negreanu gets a little bit more value out of that. Another cool thing about this is that Negreanu likes to talk about his wheelhouse, or what does he call it?
His neighborhood.
His neighborhood, and it's all those low cards.
Mr. Negreanu's neighborhood. Won't you be his neighbor?
I would watch that show, probably.
I mean,
maybe. I don't know. Anyway, he likes to say stuff like, that's my neighborhood. So it's a type of flop that Negreanu would bluff on, at least some of the time, maybe more than the average player because of that whole perception he's created for himself. And that way he can get value because people might think he's bluffing a little bit more often.
Also, Calacanis is an amateur, and he might raise some overpairs, some of the bigger overpairs. This gives Daniel a chance to 3-bet right now with the worst hand, but with fold equity. It's a pretty sweet spot if you can get in there.
Right. Daniel doesn't fear anything, obviously, because it's such an incredibly good flop. Maybe he fears if Doyle raises and Calacanis 3-bets, then maybe he's in a little bit of trouble with like an over flush draw versus a set or something, but that's so unlikely that it's fine just to try to get as much money as you can in. And by the way, Calacanis' call is the perfect play. It makes total sense.
Also, Negreanu gets money in now before some scare cards come for Calacanis, right? Like diamonds and 4-card straights, which would generally be good for Daniel's hand, as we can see. Mostly that's going to be bad for Calacanis, and he's going to get away. So let's get more money in now.
Jason's got an overpair, but a set would be very bad for him.
Well, there it is. A 7 on the turn, giving Negreanu a straight and Calacanis a set.
Calacanis is in a very bad spot. Daniel has the nuts. And a redraw for diamonds.
Daniel bets 7,000. Calacanis quickly calls.
Daniel's really hoping Calacanis has just a 6. That would give Calacanis a 7 high straight. Daniel has an 8 high straight. They can get all the money in, and Daniel can stack him off.
The river card is the 4 of hearts, giving Calacanis a full house.
A disaster for Daniel.
Daniel bets 20 grand.
Raise.
Daniel's thrown out a value bet. He doesn't know that he's been outdrawn. Although this raise may be an indication.
To 55,000.
This is reminiscent of a typical hand for Daniel Negreanu. Let's have the nuts with a redraw and see what happens. Let's pair the board, yeah. God, really? No, gotta be kidding.
Guess that means you don't have the Jack-9 this time.
No, I had the nuts with a redraw. What'd you make it? How much?
35 more. Only 35 more.
Only 35 more. Why?
Why not?
Why not?
I don't know.
What did you have like? You don't have a set, right? Because you would have raised me.
Yeah, I would have raised it to set. I could have flopped a straight.
Could have flopped straight. Okay, I can beat that. Whew.
I could be on a flush draw. Could be busted.
Yeah, that's true too. 4s and 5s. No, I think you raised
I could
me.
have quads.
Yeah, you could have that too.
I could have aces and just be overplaying them.
I was gonna fold for sure, and now I'm thinking about calling you. So you're doing a good job if that's what you want.
Okay, good. Now I'm going to be quiet and pretend that's not what I want.
Did you raise me with a 6? No. It's just so sick how these hands always come out like this.
That's 6-8 of clubs.
Diamonds.
6-8.
35 more. You insta-raised me.
Daniel's trying to recreate the hand in his head. A lot of inexperienced players don't have it in them to make this raise with just a 6, let alone something worse, which is all Daniel can beat at this point.
Huh. Let me see, what do you got left? You really did talk me into calling you, I think.
Now I say nothing.
What?
Now I say nothing.
Now you say nothing? God, I was gonna just throw it away.
It's only 3 chips.
Yeah, that's true. Why did you not raise me on the flop?
You can afford it.
Why didn't you raise me on the flop?
I'm a donkey. I don't know how to play this game. I'm only up to chapter 8. You see me shove my whole stack over to him with just kings?
Just kings, I did see you do that.
Pretty obvious he had me beat. Could have been 2 pair or anything.
Huh?
You said he had me beat. It was obvious.
I'm confusing myself. I should shut up.
Are you saying you got out-talked? I can't believe it.
Big time. Yeah, I'm confused.
Daniel Negreanu got out-talked.
Yeah. Well, we don't know yet.
That's unbelievable.
I still might make the right decision. It's 50-50.
Still, man, she said you should shut up.
Doyle's about to call it
Good.
five.
Yeah, TV time. Yeah, yeah.
Don't worry about it. It's costing about
I'm on a YouTube
$15,000 an hour. Actually, I think that my raise costs less than the amount of time it takes.
I'm having a hard time putting you on a hand.
Yeah, that's the problem with new players, especially bad ones.
You talked me out of 35 dimes. This is so sick. Oh, no. Insta-raised me on the river. I need another minute, and I promise I'll act.
Nobody's calling the clock. I don't think anybody will.
Maybe you do just have a 6. You can have a straight and just do that, right?
You know I don't care about the money, so
Yeah,
I'm capable of anything that way. And I'm a bad player. I've proven that already. And I'm talking a lot, which is ridiculous. That's a total tell.
You're just talking me right out of my money.
If you fold and give the dealer $1,000, I'll still show it to you. How about that?
I love that.
Hang on. If I fold,
If you fold and you tip the dealer $1,000, I will show it to you. You have to split it with the other dealer.
that's a good deal.
So $1,000, you know what I have. You don't have to live and wait till the end of
You don't
the
think you
season.
know what you're
There's the call.
Sorry, not in the hand.
He called it. Sevens.
Yeah, that's good.
So much chitter-chatter.
Yeah.
But before we get into all the talking and what we think about that, let's just look at the gameplay itself. And the first question to ask is this a good bet by Daniel? I think it is. What do you think?
I think it is. I think it's good that he built value on the flop. Then he started betting big against the amateur on the turn and the river when he really thought he had it, especially on the turn. He obviously had it. 7,000 on the turn and then 20,000 into 23,000 on the river, which are both designed for maximum value, obviously. He's thinking if Calacanis has a 6, he's probably going to bet less than 20,000 if I check to him. And if Calacanis has an overpair, he's just going to check it back if I check to him. Absolutely. So I have to try to get heroed by that. So this bet makes a lot of sense by Daniel.
Also, once in a while, maybe Calacanis has a hand like Ace-4, has trip 4s with the best kicker and heroes there because, you know, you have trip 4s. It's pretty good kind of a thing. It's not impossible. I like this, trying to get value out of a 6 and trying to get so much value out of a 6.
And also the other hands that are definitely going to check. So that makes a lot of sense on Negreanu's part. There's nothing wrong with the bet. And then he gets in this really tough spot. This is not a fun spot to be in, for sure.
No, Calacanis has to raise. It's completely reasonable, of course. His sizing's perfectly good. And now Daniel's in a tough spot, and he immediately starts talking about, like, first he says this.
This is reminiscent of a typical hand for Daniel Negreanu. Let's have the nuts with a redraw and see what happens. Let's pair the board, yeah. God, really?
Because he's always in these spots on TV. We've seen this a million times with Daniel.
It's actually kind of hilarious at this point how often it happens. It's just brutal.
High stakes poker for Daniel, it seems like, all the time. If it's a cash game and it's on TV, he's getting cooler.
Yeah.
So he knows this, and he's aware that there's a lot of hands that are beating him, and there's very few hands that he's ahead of anymore.
Right. The only bluffs that Calacanis reasonably has at this point are flush draws. And the question Daniel has to ask is Calacanis actually going to raise flush draws? Is he really going to pull the trigger on a bluff on this scary, scary board where Daniel's just gone bet, bet, bet? It feels like probably not, but Daniel has to consider that a possibility to even consider calling, even though his hand is so good.
I think it's really hard to think Calacanis is going to do that. And Daniel also has 2 flush cards in his hand, so he blocks some of the flush draws.
He does.
So that sucks too, or maybe makes it easier to put him on value. The other question Daniel has to answer, and then he starts to use the table talk to try and figure this out. Can Calacanis do this with just a 6? So he's got a straight, he's an amateur, he thinks it's really strong, he raises. Is that possible? Because we can beat that, but that's all we can beat for value.
Right, and it seems unlikely that he would do that with a 6 also. So now Daniel has to say, what is the value? And the thing is, there's not much there either. 7's full makes a lot of sense, but a lot of the other full houses do not.
Right, we were talking about it on our podcast where we go much, much more in depth in this hand. And every time we do a podcast, we do that with all of our videos. And we were saying Calacanis had a hand like 4-5 or 3-4, which are also full houses, and other hands he really might raise on the river. We'd expect him to.
Or a flop set.
Or a flop set, absolutely. He's almost always going to raise the flop because that board is super wet and there's so many bad cards. And Calacanis, as he even talks about in this hand with Daniel right here.
Did you see me shove my whole stack over to him with just kings?
Just kings, I did see you do that.
He's happy to get in and on the flop with a very strong hand.
Right, he absolutely is. So it seems unlikely he would have any of the flop sets or flop 2 pairs. So that leaves us with pocket 7s, which he has, or 7-4, which he would play probably the same way.
Right, but if he's playing only suited 7-4s, which we think is likely anyway, we don't think he's opening 7-4 off on the button pretty much ever. Now there's only one combination of that. So that's really unlikely. There's just not much value here that Daniel should be afraid of. And I think that's why Daniel ultimately finds a call. Well, that and there's a lot of talking.
Right. I don't know if it's true that Calacanis actually talked Daniel into a call, even though Daniel says stuff that makes it seem like that's the case. It's just that Daniel has so near the top of his range here that he feels obligated. He's also getting a pretty good price here. But Calacanis says a lot of stuff that usually is strength.
Yeah, like, let's look at this right here.
You have like, you don't have a set, right? Because you would have raised me.
Yeah, I would have raised it a set. I could have flopped a straight.
Could have flopped straight. Okay, I can beat that. Whew.
I could be on a flush draw. Could be busted.
Yeah, that's true too.
And this right here.
I could have aces and just be overplaying them.
I was going to fold for sure, and now I'm thinking about calling you. So you're doing a good job if that's what you want.
Both of these statements are weakening his range. So he's making it sound like he could have worse hands than what Daniel has. And you only do that when you're strong. Almost everyone, anyway, does that only when they're strong. And he does have a few range strengthening statements, but very few. There's this one.
I think you raised
I could have
me.
quads.
I don't know, I think that's it actually, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. That's probably the only one. He also constantly is referring to how he's a bad player.
Yeah.
Let's play every time he says that.
And I'm a bad player. I've proven that already. I could have aces and just be overplaying them.
I was.
I'm a donkey. I don't know how to play this game. I'm only up to chapter 8. Did you see me shove my whole stack over to him with just kings? Yeah, that's the problem with new players, especially bad ones.
And that seems like he's really strong when he does that. It's like, I'm bad, you have to call me, I'm just a bad player, whatever, whoop-de-doo! Also, the speed with which he raises and the way he raises. So there's a lot of indications of strength. It's just so hard to figure out a value hand.
Yeah, and to be clear, every time Calacanis says he's a bad player, what he's implying is, I can do this with worse hands, which is also weakening his range, which, if we're using our tells the way Daniel's supposed to be using them, boy, that feels strong.
And I'm a bad player. I've proven that already.
The problem is, Daniel has a really good hand here, and if there's any chance at all that Calacanis can be raising with a 6, now it's really hard to fold.
Right, and Daniel's getting 3-1. He doesn't want to get bluffed on TV. That might be a little bit of it. It also might just be that Daniel likes calling. We know Daniel likes calling.
He loves to call.
But to be fair, this is not a bad call. This is a call that pretty much everybody makes all the time. It's such a strong hand in this spot, and it's really hard to figure out value for Calacanis. The problem is, it feels like you're losing. You just know you're losing. You know he's not going to turn over king, queen of diamonds here.
This feels like it would be a much worse call if Daniel had a lone 6, like ace-6 suited. So when he's calling really just to chop, that seems bad.
Yeah.
Because now he loses to all the value or chops and can't almost ever win against Calacanis' value. And if we don't think Calacanis has very many bluffs at all, well, okay, that's not going to work out well. But at least we can beat a hand that maybe in some universes Calacanis is raising. So that helps a little bit anyway.
Right. If Calacanis is raising 6s at least some of the time, it's definitely a good call.
Yeah.
If he's never raising them, it's maybe a little questionable.
But that's tough to know. And as I said on the podcast, most people don't make millions upon millions of dollars playing poker like Daniel Negreanu has, folding super strong hands to one raise on the river. If you want to see our response to comments on this video, click right here.
If you guys want to see another Daniel Negreanu in the big game hand, check out Daniel Negreanu versus the movie star by clicking over there.
Another rich amateur Daniel Negreanu is up against.
Yeah.
They always have big hands. I don't know.
They happen to sometimes.
Yeah. Also, check out our podcast where we delve much, much deeper into the strategy of this hand. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.